route. Responses engine 5, engine 3, engine 1, ladder 3, ladder 2, rescue 1. We've got smoke showing. Division 1, you're on location, box 23, reporting smoke showing 727.
Jobtlks podcast members do not represent the cities and towns they work for in their views and opinions. They are views and opinions that belong to us only. We are not here trying to be the experts or tell people how to do their job. Our goal with this show is simply to facilitate knowledge sharing. Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 13, Jobtlks podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the fire service as an all hazards agency. Just a reminder, if you like what we're doing, please go and follow us on our social medias at Jobtlks, Jobtlks, both on Facebook and Instagram. If you're watching us on YouTube, you already know where to find us, but if you don't, you can look us up, youtube.com/Jobtlks, Jobtlks. We want this to be user-driven, so please give us your feedback. Just real quick, I want to take 1 minute moment of silence for the Philadelphia firefighter who was killed this week in a structural collapse, Lieutenant Sean Williamson. Just keeping him, his department, his family in our thoughts. All right, Barry, it's all yours.
All right, so today we're going to dive into the topic of all hazards. Is a big buzzword in the fire service now. Nowadays, we no longer fight just fires. I don't know if anybody realized that.
Fight each other. Yeah,
we fight each other a lot. But just transitioning into, there's a lot of other services that we provide and trying to communicate that to the public. And just kind of diving into, like, you hear the term all hazards, which is a cool, sexy word, but what does it actually mean? Like, what does all hazards actually mean? So just kind of wanted to dive into that. That'd be good, and kind of sets us up for some future specialty topics.
It means there's no one else, so call the fire department.
Yeah, if you're not calling the police, you're calling the fire department.
Yeah, no, we're very much the catch-all. However, there is some intentionality to being an all-hazard agency and how you can plan accordingly to kind of mitigate some threats. So here's a video. Good in illustrating what an all-hazards agency is and effectively communicating that to the public.
You never quite know what it's going to be.
Residential structure fire.
I'm going to swing in towards you right now.
How you doing, man?
Can you full screen that?
We don't just put out fires.
San Bernardino County has the largest footprint of any county in the lower 48. So with that comes lots of different challenges.
Fires, earthquakes, floods, pandemic.
EMS, rescue, hazmat.
What this job ingrains into you, everything's figure-outable.
When you dial 911, highly trained people show up to solve whatever the issue is.
I love my job. I love being a part of the community. I want to go home at the end of my shift thinking maybe I helped somebody today.
So that's obviously San Bernardino County. They're a very large fire department, but I thought they did a really good job of, like, selling all hazards and articulating what exactly all hazards means. My favorite part was when they're saying everything's figure-outable.
I was literally thinking, I was like, is that a word? I feel like there's a better way to say that.
It is now.
It is now.
It's termed and coined by San Bernardino.
Patented.
Yeah.
I think it's an important topic, not only for people in the fire service to understand, like, that we're in all hazards and that we have all these different roles to play, but also, like, this would be a great episode for people who aren't in the fire service to watch and learn about the fire service, because all you hear is firefighter, and that's what people think. And I actually just had this conversation with my father-in-law because we were talking about a call I had, and he was like, I don't understand. So they send the fire department for this medical thing, and I had to, like, even though I've explained it before, explain it, this whole thing about, well, no, we're EMTs and first responders, we're strategically located, all this stuff, and, like, it's good for people to know that it's not just fires, because that's when they're like, well, if there's not a fire every day, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, I had a really good and I think one of the things is, like, the onus is on us to effectively communicate to the community and sell what exactly it is that we do, because as the fire service changes, which we'll get into, you have to be able to effectively articulate the net value for the community. And if you don't, that's on us, right? We didn't effectively articulate to our customers what value we bring to the table. That's with any industry, right? So I had a very interesting conversation similar to along the lines you had with Glue Tevlin about
the famous Glue Tevlin. We should bring him on.
We should bring him on.
Yeah, Glue. We'd love to have you on the show, Glue Tevlin. He had the bay doors open at in your neck of the woods at Squad 4, Engine 4, and some people came in and were kind of like poking around Squad 4 and Engine 4, and they were initially a little bit, I wouldn't say like hostile, but kind of standoffish, and they were like, "Oh, what are you guys doing? Just hanging out?" And he was like, literally the perfect guy for this.
Yeah,
you couldn't have picked a better person to deal with standoffish people than Glue Tevlin, because he's like a ray of fucking positivity.
And he'll school you.
Yeah, no, he schooled. Like, I wasn't even there, and I was in.
Yeah.
It was me and Todd Martingello. We were just listening to him tell this story, and we were just like sold. I was like, I wasn't even there, and I fucking want to be a part of this.
I did some ride time with you, and that was an overly positive experience.
Yeah.
Really good guy.
But he said, they came in and they were like, "Oh, like, what are you guys doing? Like, just hanging out, watching TV?" And he, Glue was like, "No, actually, we've had a pretty busy morning. We've had, 5 or 6 runs." And he said the lady like peeked her head outside and was like, "Really? Because I don't see a lot of smoke.
Really?
I don't see a lot of fire." And Hugh just doubled down on the positivity, as he always does. And he's like, "Well, actually," he's like, as a taxpayer, like, do you guys know like what capabilities the city, has to offer you?" And they're like, "Well, we think that you guys fight fires." And he's like, "Actually, we do a lot more than that." And he's like, "Hey, come on in." So he like takes him around the squad. He's like, "Actually, like, you are very fortunate to live in the city. We have so many resources that we offer. We're proud to offer you." He's like, "We do EMS, we do hazmat, we do technical rescue, we do dive rescue, we do trench." And he said by the time they left, they were like completely blown away.
Yeah, right.
And they said, they're like, "Why don't you guys do a better job of communicating this to the public?" They're like, "We just thought you guys did fires. Like,
Because
we had
then
no
they'll
idea."
Call us more.
Yeah. Right. And they were like, "We had no idea." Right. And they apologized. They were like, "We're sorry that we, we're condescending. Like, we had no idea that you guys did all that." And he was like, "Yeah, thanks. Tell your friends.
Yeah.
But I think that highlights we need to do a better job as an industry of effectively communicating what it actually services we provide, to get that message out there. We're no longer just fighting fires. So in my mind, it's irrefutable. The fire service has gone over immense change in the last 50 years, right? The conversation has gone from like, "Hey, John, how many fires did you have this shift?" to "How many fires did your department have this month?" or "How many fires did your department have this year?" Right. So with that, we need to change the narrative. But I think that with that change in like the amount of fire volume and load, it changes, like, there's significant change, but there's also significant opportunity for growth within the agency, and just finding like our niche and like we're truly a multifaceted all hazards agency, right? But it's important to understand that we need to effectively communicate that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think not even just the last 50 years, but since 9/11, I would say there's been a huge shift, because like after 9/11, and I guess I didn't work in the fire service before then, but after 9/11, we got involved in a lot of Department of Homeland Security stuff. Like, we have the UASI in our area, the Urban Area Security Initiative, where we do not just, the tech rescue and the medic stuff, but we also do urban search and rescue, floods, swift water, like all these different things for natural disasters, for terrorist attacks, for, we're rad, we're nuke, we're, all these different specialties that we have and resources that we have, because of, unfortunately, reactionary to some of the stuff that's happened over the last 20, 30 years.
And I think it's a really good point. And I think one of the things that lends itself well to the fire service being an all hazards agency is just the individual backgrounds of all these people, right? That like come into the firehouse and end up being a cohesive team. But like, you have extensive background in like structural components, like overhaul, building, demolition, which lends itself very well to the fire service. You have a significant background in like growing up in Florida, being on the water. You have like
a background of growing up in Florida.
No,
that's awesome.
Like, but you spend a lot of time around marinas,
on the beach,
so
relaxing.
Yeah. So like for your like
doing weird shit,
inherent knowledge, like coming in the door with a lot of experience as a boat operator, whereas to me, like, that was a completely foreign topic. And me, like, I really just walked in the door with nothing, and have no marketable skills whatsoever, and was fortunate just to hang out with some people, and like now I'm okay at everything.
But that's it too, though. It's not like the quote sexy stuff, the tech rescue and all that stuff. It's plumbing, it's electrical, it's construction. Like knowing that, not only knowing that stuff, but going in for a water leak or for something else that and we don't necessarily fix and do everything for everybody because there are services for that, but we have people that can respond and like mitigate like immediate problems and then let the specialists come in and fix them.
It's a well-known thing that we're justifying our existence by being 100%. An all hazards agency and by responding to the townspeople's problems.
Right.
100%.
Whatever it may be.
And I think that brings up a really good point, because one of the things I wanted to talk about is like sometimes it can be like kind of a contentious issue among some of like the subtopics and specialties, which we'll get into in future episodes. But we're not the only industry that has to justify our existence, and that should not be a controversial topic, right? Like whether you work in the private sector, the public sector, whether you're in government service, right? The organization needs to continuously evolve in order to stay relevant,
right?
So I don't think that should be something like we do all this additional shit now, it's unnecessary, it detracts from the mission. No, the mission is providing an effective service to the public, whatever that looks like, right? So you need to be cognizant and address the realities, the operational realities of the world that we live in,
right?
And shift your either capabilities, shift the way that we respond to the public to always continuously be that indispensable asset to the community.
Right. I have a question. Do you think that in this all hazards agency style that we run now, and most departments are that way. I mean, there are, you look at some of the bigger departments and they're all hazards too, but they still do a lot more like the straight firefighting and stuff like that. But do you think that the all hazards response should fall on everybody within the fire department? Like, is it too much now for one person, or to expect everybody to know everything? Or do you think it should be like specialized teams that know, like you have a team that does, and this happens a lot, right? So you have a team that's a dive, you have a team that's a boat operator, you have a team that's tech rescue, you have a team that's whatever. Or do you think that everybody should have a general knowledge of all of it?
I think it's impossible to have the expectation that one person is proficient in everything, just because I subscribe to the ideology that you only have so much bandwidth in life. Therefore, you can choose to be like mediocre at a lot of things, which I think sometimes works, right? Or at least have like a good baseline knowledge.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to be really good at a couple of things.
Yeah.
So I think that is very much agency dependent, right? So if you're in a larger agency where you can kind of get away with like having a bunch of specialty teams, to where like guys, like I really enjoy rope, so I've kind of like taken that upon myself as a rope guy-ish, in learning. You're very proficient with boat operations, hazmat, right? So I think you can be like really good at like a couple of things, but I don't think it's a realistic expectation to have like everyone just be good at everything. I don't. But if you're in a smaller agency, like where you have like 4 or 5 guys or a shift, like
right.
I don't think you have the luxury to have like all these teams.
So from like my perspective, right?
Yeah.
So we're running 11 guys for a minimum, but we get up 12, 13 sometimes. Our goal is to get like a 13-man minimum with like 15 on staff. But even with that, we're not going to have a hazmat team. We're not going to have a dive team. We're not going to have a tech team. We're not going to have anything like that. So everybody's concentrating on being a good paramedic and being a good firefighter. We have a lot of practice to become good paramedics. We have a lot of practice at practice. I don't know how else to word that. We do a lot of we do a lot of BLS stuff. We don't have as many opportunities at like the ALS stuff that some of us. And I think that it's almost like all the fires have disappeared. A lot of the ALS has disappeared too, because people's medications and their health is and doctors' understanding of diseases and things like that, it's progressed so much. Like we don't have anywhere near the amount of CHF that used to be floating around. This guy said they tube people every week 15 years ago. I've got, I don't have more than 2 to 3 tubes a year at this point.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a tube in the last like 6 months.
I would call it true ALS.
Yeah, true ALS stuff. We don't have the kind of opportunity that really I wish we had, so that we could keep as sharp as we want. So, but we have more opportunity at that than we do at fire. So basically, where I'm from, we're doing we're concentrating on becoming good paramedics and good firefighters, and we cross staff everything. So you, in that sense, have to be good at, you have to know about the ladder, you have to know about the engine, you have to know about the ambulance. And so there's already a lot. And everybody, and so that's, to answer your question, everybody is expected to more or less be proficient at everything. Now you have guys that really take EMS to the top, and then you have guys who really are like heavily concentrated and becoming better firefighters and knowing more about fireground tactics and things like that. It's important to have a mix, in my opinion, but at the end of the day, if someone goes down, the next person needs to be able to stand up and get the job done, right?
And I think that's like a lot of like mutual aid comes into play there, and knowing what resources you have. Like in at least I could speak for Massachusetts, we have districts and we have state teams, so we have the capability for the smaller towns to have those resources available to them, and the smaller towns might just have to mitigate the incident, you know, at their level temporarily, and then you can get a state hazmat team, you can get a district tech rescue team. We showed that when we gave the shout out to Munson, and we kind of talked about a little bit of that portion of it in the operational realities episode, which you could click the button and find.
We won't take that to the extreme we did last time. No, I think it harkens back to a lot of the conversations we even had in episode 1 all the way back, about there's pros and cons to each system design. Like yours necessitates like being proficient at a broad spectrum, right? Where like maybe in smaller systems you don't have the opportunity to be like a true expert in one. Whereas in like in the city, if you're assigned to an engine company, you can get really good at engine company operations, squad, ladder. But maybe you also lose the opportunity to be like pretty proficient with ladder work, pretty proficient on the ambulance, pretty proficient on the engine. And that's not to speak like generally like there's some people that are just competent across the board at big or small agencies. But I think that's one of the things is like a smaller agency potentially necessitates at least being aware or proficient, or at least knowing the resources that are in your area to fulfill that need. So I did a fair amount of research for this episode because, you know, everyone, I feel in some ways like all hazards is pretty self-explanatory. It's like, oh, we respond to all hazards. But I actually like wanted to dive into like what that means as like a foundation for, you know, some of the upcoming episodes we have. And just talking about like the overall cultural shift from being like the fire department to being like an all hazards agency and like fire and, you know, rescue services or fire and emergency services, right? So FEMA's definition is natural, technological, or human-caused incidents that warrant action to protect life, property, environment, public health, or safety, and to minimize disruptions to school activities, which is very important.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That was off FEMA's website, so I don't know if it was very education-oriented or what. But I found it more like a working person's definition, I guess you could say, that made a lot more sense to me, which is the all hazards approach is a comprehensive emergency preparedness framework that takes a full scope of emergencies or disasters into account when planning for response capacities and mitigation efforts. This means you're not focused on just the most common or most impactful and critical events, but you have prepared for all hazards that your community is most likely to face. So one of the big takeaways that, like, from my understanding of gleaning that is essentially like, just because you're an all hazards agency doesn't mean you're prepared for every possible conceivable scenario, because you can never be prepared for every possible conceivable scenario, but you're focusing on developing the capacity and capability to respond to the most likely ones for your community, and at least having like a workable plan for most things you'll encounter, or knowing who to call if you encounter something new.
So for taking like our department into account, like thinking about that, like hazmat would be a big one, dive would be a big one, obviously fire, EMS, stuff like that. And if you look, I mean, that's a lot of the stuff that we focus on the most. I mean,
yeah, it's very reflective of individual communities. Like we have a huge, like, even like all hazard, like, yes, it's all hazards, but it's like very tailored to the realism of your community. Right. So like Cambridge, for example, right, we have a huge like biotechnical and industrial industry, to where like the pharmaceutical industry is huge. So we have like a very robust like hazardous materials response. We have the marine unit, we have the dive unit, stuff that's like reflective of like our geographical location, where Stoughton might invest itself in other, like having like a robust like hazmat or like marine unit might not be realistic if you're not like located on like a coastal waterway or off of Boston Harbor.
There's also budgetary concerns, right? Like 100%. You don't have an unlimited budget, so you have to put that money to the places that are going to be the most beneficial for.
We have a small pond. We just use the skiff for it. Wouldn't call it a marine unit.
Hey, that's perfect.
But that's you don't need to like. That's where that reality manifests itself, right? You don't need to invest in like a large marine unit because that's not an effective use of your budget or resources.
No, it's not. The only other thing that we have is a brush truck.
That's a perfect example, though. We don't have a brush truck.
I was going to say, there's no need for you guys to have a brush truck.
Yeah, I mean, we have areas that could burn, but you
have access to those with regular fire vehicles, right?
Yeah, that's like a really easy, obvious thing that I didn't even think of.
I will say the brush truck is like an absolute blast to drive. Ours is old. We're getting a new one. It should be coming in this year, but this thing has like this whole roll cage and bar system on it, and you just run over all these small trees and bomb through the woods with it. Get out with a chainsaw, like
right.
It's like those old,
and it's a totally different type of firefighting too.
Oh
right?
yeah.
So you're getting out with chainsaws and rakes and brooms and shovels and
actual work.
Yeah, like
dude, we showed up to a brush fire and we heard a brush fire, so we get the trucks down there. We respond with everything else. We go out there. It's a structure fire in the middle of the woods. It was this old barn. Dude, it was massive. We go out there. When I'm telling you, like, the flames were like 3 stories high, like this whole building just went up in smoke, and it was old, so it burned like real fast. But I mean, we had like 3 or 4 different brush trucks. I think it was like us and Foxborough and Sharon and Easton. Yeah, so there's like 4 brush trucks there, and that was
doing the best you can.
It was fun.
That's a surprise when you think you're rolling out for a brush fire, and it's probably some kids drinking or something.
So it's funny you say that. I go over and I see this kid, and he's like wicked upset. I'm like, hey man, is everything all right? And he's like, that's like sobbing. I'm like, dude, what's up? And he was like, my fucking car was in there, man. And it was like this old, like it was like an Oldsmobile Cutlass or something like that. And he was so bummed out. But it was just like, I mean, I thought by the way he was reacting, I thought like like one of his buddies was in there or something,
Well,
it was one of his buddies.
One of his oldest friends.
Yeah. It's like, oh shit.
That's cool. Like, it's still cool to see like those post World War II like deuce and a half or like buggies Korean War era that have been like repurposed.
Yeah.
But they're so well made, they just keep going.
Dude, you can't kill those trucks.
No.
I used to own a deuce and a half.
Really?
Yeah. I just bought one because I thought it was cool.
I love it.
I put like the big super singles on it and everything. My dad bought one too. And
you guys just rolling around Brockton and like 2 giant deuce and a halves.
So awesome. funny story. We had like floods. I forget what year it was. It was probably like 2011, 2012. Like Brockton got flooded out. So I'm driving this thing to and from work, and I go over to this neighborhood.
Gas prices aren't like there now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, shit.
The National Guard was there, and there was this neighborhood that was completely flooded out, and it was just happened to be the way that I went home. And so he like wades through the water, moves the cone, and starts like waving me in. And I used to keep like a military hat in my my truck too. So he was just like, he was like, all right, yeah, thank you. And I'm just like driving home, just like,
that's awesome.
That's awesome. I mean, but thing about Boston, they have high water trucks for that reason.
Right,
they have sections of their city that during some storms can completely flood out.
Absolutely.
So that's another thing they have to be able and aware of and able to respond to.
Same thing I was going to say. If you guys are getting a new woods vehicle, I know a guy that can get you a Humvee.
Dude, I know.
That thing was nice.
That was awesome.
I think it was pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have a LMTV out back.
Yeah.
I know. I started talking to my mechanic about it, because he was all for taking like an older truck, like a bulletproof truck, like a Deuce, and doing something with it. But I think it was just like a hard sell to the town because a lot of people don't want to deal with used stuff because you don't want to deal with other people's problems if it's like a used machine that had issues, things like that. They just want a working vehicle that's gonna
get
the job done.
So I think one of the things that we touched on that is like the theme of like again like back to the theme of like operational reality, but developing an all hazards approach doesn't mean you need to spend like exorbitant amounts of money to like have all this equipment and then hopefully like maybe maybe you buy a bunch of equipment, but then don't develop the true capability because you just don't have the personnel or manpower to really justify having all this equipment. But it essentially just means like having the capability to effectively plan for the most likely scenarios and trying to be like cost effective within your means, I think is really important.
And again, I think that's where like district teams and, you know, for us UASI and stuff comes in, is where you have this collective of money so that you can put these teams together and have the budget to do so when, you know, a small town might not be able to afford to, you know, put a tech rescue team together on their own, or not only afford it, but like you said, not have the personnel to staff it.
And that's what's great about those regional teams. Like, you know, we talked about Munson, and their response time was pretty quick for that tech rescue. But in like smaller communities where you might have, you know, everyone's proficient across the board, but like say John, for example, like gets really into rope, right? Or USAR type stuff, right? So there's always a John somewhere, you know, in every department, and then it becomes like a regional asset where they have all these guys that they create a regional team, and then individuals from each, you know, 1 or 2 guys from each department will respond where it doesn't deplete that agency's resources.
Exactly.
And they can create like a collective regional.
The police do it too with like the SWAT teams, the stop team. Is they have, you know, people in every department spread out, so when they have a call out, it's not overwhelming one department, and they can get people fairly quickly.
Yeah, everyone pays like a small amount into that, or it's, you know, a state-run entity and you get state money, what have you, but that's where you get that capability and capacity on a larger sense. Like your response time, it might be a little bit slower, but that way, like each community doesn't need to justify having this exorbitant budget for stuff they're going to use very infrequently. They can pool their resources and maybe get some state money, and then send 1 or 2 guys to training that maintain that capability and round out the collective. So
we also do that with does DHS own like the hazmat and like the you know, the trailers that are stationed throughout like the districts at hospitals and stuff for like for terrorist attack or bio attack or hazmat and stuff like that, where there are so many systems in place that are like redundancies and backups to backups, and again, like that's just a part of it because you can't have every department be able to do everything, so they have strategically located and
that was that big commitment after 9/11 to one, like the Department of Homeland Security, like injecting a lot of money into these smaller communities, but also like things that we take for granted every day, like ICS and NIMS, weren't really around before 9/11. Like having like the concept of having
that came out of
having like a unified command, like having communities next to you, like being on the same frequency, or at least having like a data bank on their radio,
using the same language,
like having the ability to have some like interoperability to where like I would argue now like you could transplant a company from Stoughton and put it with Miami-Dade and then like another company from Colorado, and you could probably still fight a fire pretty effectively.
Yeah, it's pretty close, I would say.
But that's one of the things. So like one of the things that I thought might be interesting to highlight, we've already talked about it a little bit, is just kind of like running through like what are some of the unique needs of our communities, which we talked about, right? So like Cambridge, you know, we have like a significant pharmaceutical and biotechnical industry, and that necessitates us having a pretty robust hazmat team. We have the water, right? So we have Boston Harbor, we have the Charles, so that necessitates us having a more like robust marine presence.
The harbor's not really ours. We're more mutual aid.
Mutual aid, yeah. You can actually probably speak to that a little bit better.
Well, so what's funny is you talk to, what do you call him, Glue Hevlin?
Glue Tevlin is his name, actually.
You talk to him, so he worked EMS in another community for 20 plus years. He was in Quincy, and they have a humongous shoreline too, so they have, you know, a pretty robust marine unit. And we were talking about this literally the other day, and he's like, it's funny because I've worked there for 20 something years, and I could tell you how many drownings I've had, but on the Charles, it's every year you have a couple people that are in the water, and just that, not only having it, but literally having those calls as frequently as we do, which isn't you know, it's not like every day, but you know, it's there. And like you said, all the biotech, all the labs that we have. I mean, there's stuff in our city that you don't even know is there. I mean, we have NASA. We have
Fun fact: the backup command center for NASA is in Cambridge. It was originally supposed to be in Cambridge because of JFK,
right?
And then after JFK got killed, I think it was Lyndon Johnson. He was next up. He's from Texas, so they made it.
And you wouldn't know
Texas.
You wouldn't know it when you drive past. I was actually did a call in that neck of the woods this morning before I got off shift. You wouldn't know it except that you start seeing all the license plates are government.
Yeah, right.
The vehicles. It's not labeled or advertised but that's something that you have to know.
We even have a nuclear reactor. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
MIT has a nuclear reactor, so we have some radiologic capabilities. But what do you guys have that's like pretty specific to Stoughton that represent like your guys?
Honestly, man,
operational hazards.
I don't think we have anything like really unique. I mean, I think we're like. Do
you have like a large industrial base or?
No, I mean we have an industrial park. But we don't really have any. I mean, we have like some like gas facilities, and then we have like one of those cold storage units. So those are our like target hazards, but it's nothing like specialized outside of like our normal day to day. Like we all know when we get that, if we get that call, I don't want to say when, we all know what we're doing. Like if we're going to cold storage, it doesn't matter. You're going in there packed up, right. You're not going into that building.
It doesn't always have to be specialties either. So, like, not necessarily your community, but maybe communities around you have high incidences of drug overdoses or labs, meth labs, or stuff like that. So it doesn't always have to be a specialty, like, unit, but it is something that can be not necessarily unique, but a lot more frequent to different communities than others. So
I would say, so we don't have any like special agencies like you're saying. No, we don't. But we definitely do have, in the area, and you wouldn't think it because we're like not in the meth belt or anything. But we've heard of like, towns and things like that in the area, finding drug labs, meth labs, things like that. Certainly, overdoses just like everybody else.
And sometimes that's harder because if we are going to a lab, say at MIT or Raytheon or one of these places, we know we're going to a lab.
Yes.
Versus you're getting a call for some explosion or a fire or something, and then you have to walk in and recognize like, this is not what it seems,
right?
And have the like wherewithal to like change your tactics, whether that is pulling out of there until you can get somebody in that can meter or identify, or whether it's whatever the case is. So that's part of the all hazards too. It's not just like the specialty stuff, is like showing up and having the unexpected and having the ability to like, oh, this is not a fire, this is a drug lab, hazmat, whatever the case is, and be able to like change your tactics. So that's an important one.
We actually have a handful of guys that are on the hazmat team in our region, so luckily we have a lot of guys with a lot of heads-up capability.
Institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's also important. Like, a specific community might not have anything that's considered, like, crazy, but understanding, like, the communities around you that you might be going mutual aid to, that you should definitely be, like, if an adjacent community has some, like, huge petrochemical plant, like, if there's something really ever does happen there, like, you're 100% going mutual aid.
Right.
So you guys need to have a good knowledge.
It's like Everett has the LNG tankers, the gas tankers that come in, like, those are huge hazard. Fortunately, knock on wood, things don't go terribly wrong often with that kind of stuff. But it's a huge hazard.
That's actually a good point that you bring up, because we do have the rail that comes through. I think it's just commuter rail. I don't think we have what's that big rail that everything travels across the country on? CSX,
Making
that's what it is.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we have anything coming through the town in that sense, but that brings up a good point of something that may not be well known, and it might not be well known to like people out there who might be listening, is that a lot of these companies and people who are buying and selling our propane and natural gas and everything like that, they don't have any capabilities of storing this stuff, and so where do they store it? On the rail.
Yep.
And so we have this huge possibility of
100%.
Oh yeah, we don't
of hazard. I should just call it hazard.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into hazards and risks in a second.
I don't think we fortunately like us deal with a lot of that stuff. But I mean, you go to other places in the country. I mean, you got tankers full of chlorine.
Oh yeah.
People don't realize it has one goal. It's just to kill stuff.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And like you have one issue with that,
or make your pool fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's important too.
it's
not all
important.
negative.
Or ammonia.
Chlorine
Or-
gets a bad rap. You know?
So that was
true.
the cold stores, the ammonia.
I was thinking
I don't
that.
know
So
if
we
you guys
just
have ever had any experience with it.
we just talked
but
about
it's
just like the little ammonia.
Yeah.
yeah, we just talked about ammonia. We did hazmat decon class yesterday,
Yeah,
and that was one of the things we were talking about was ammonia. And
Yeah. If you're ever
Sure,
exposed
but-
to it, you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
You'll recognize it immediately. And so there was at my father's yard, there was someone dropped something off. Unbeknownst to us, it got thrown in the backyard, and it's a scrap metal recycling facility. And the guy grabbed it with a machine, and it popped it open, and it was a sealed, system that had ammonia in it. And so everybody's just kind of like scratching their throat, and it's just weird. And then when we finally found it and got close to it, it was like when it was overpowering. And when they say how fast it'll displace oxygen, it's like you're like, wow, like you could tell. So it wasn't more than a few months later that one of the guys had picked up. It was like what we would just call like a radiator, and it was sealed. And like unbeknownst to him, it just looked like a piece of scrap metal that he was going to cut up and put with like material. And when he cut it, it more or less, it didn't explode like a bomb, but that gas, there was a ton of gas in it and it went everywhere. And a lot of it sprayed right in his face. Oof. And he ended up like going to the hospital just because, just for precautionary stuff. But we couldn't stand in the garage. We had to get fans going and air that thing out for like an hour. Yeah. Because it's like you'd go in, you'd try to take a deep breath, and you'd just be like, it was like, it was kind of a wild thing.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you get exposed to that, you won't forget it.
It's interesting.
I plan to never be.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to do it on purpose.
Well, you've had a hazmat exposure where you were.
Yeah,
a big incident.
It was a big incident. Yeah, no, it was unknown, but I mean, it ended up being fairly benign. It was a really high concentrated peroxide, but we were all in a building, and everybody was just like, "Huh." Our hands are burning.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Fingers start turning white, and it was like, oh shit! We thought it was like water or something on the floor, and it ended up being this really strong peroxide. But
we almost
it was crazy.
We almost lost a leather hat out of that.
Well,
Sorry to bring up.
We got a leather helmet washed from that. That's for sure. Son of a bitch. But I mean, you talk about operational realities and all hazards. We had to send. I don't know. We sent 15 or plus people to the hospital within 10 minutes, and then we had to call in our mutual aid because we have a hazmat, but everybody that was a hazmat tech went to the hospital because they had the exposure.
Right.
And that came in as a structure fire.
Yeah,
it came
right.
in as smoking, and what it ended up being was that stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever, but yeah, that's
pretty crazy.
And in talking about staying relevant, a couple of the big things that are coming up for all hazards are responding to batteries. Like that's a totally new, new way to fight fires, right? And we're probably going to talk about it in an upcoming episode. Is the rescue task force stuff. Like that's just in the last few years has become a big deal too. So as the world develops, the fire service has to develop along with it.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you knew. So I was also. Oh, geez. Also at that incident.
Oh, geez.
I was staging on the outside in case they needed additional resources.
Engine 3, doing Engine 3 things.
But it was me and Dave Jones, and at the same time, there was like a homeless dude like running around Central Square with a lead pipe, like hitting people and robbing them.
I remember you telling me this.
So I was on the radio. I was like, I know there's a lot going on, but we do have a man with a lead pipe assaulting people and stealing things. So like the police showed up as me and Dave Jones, and or I should say, Flav Moans.
That's a weird one, but we'll take it.
He'll take that. The police are like,
another soon-to-be father.
Did Jason show up to this call?
No, I wish, dude.
That would have been awesome.
I
was looking forward to
Jason's
hearing
been
his.
great on calls with me.
I always look forward to hearing his stories.
Basically did our whole job for us one time.
Yes, he did. But the police were like, you guys don't have enough going on right now? Like, you couldn't wait on this? I was like, well, I don't know.
How many people does he have to smash in the head with a pipe?
I don't know. I just thought it was a perfect thing to do. But cool. So I just thought it would be like a cool introductory topic to kind of dive into some of the specialties that we're going to dive into on the next couple episodes.
Yeah.
And just to kind of facilitate that conversation, because a lot of people hear all hazards and be like, oh, it means you guys do everything, which we kind of are, like the catch-all. And it's important that we, sell ourselves appropriately. We have to communicate that we're no longer just fighting fire.
Right.
That we provide all these services, and we're really trying to be that indispensable asset to the community. And like you said, justifying our existence. But
I don't like that. I don't like that term, justifying.
You always have to justify your existence.
I think, but it's not. I agree, but it's like
no. It makes it seem like we're like fighting the battle from behind in a sense.
Yeah, instead of it's not justifying your existence as much as like demonstrating your asset,
demonstrating your capability. Okay, we can go with that. That sounds good. Yeah,
I mean, it's one and the same, but again, like I feel like you're probably right because anytime there's budgetary constraints, where do they go? They go to public safety. So you do have to justify it, but it's just
you have to advocate.
You have to advocate. For.
So I want to end this on a interesting note. So in the depths of my research, I'm going to bring it back up. Don't worry.
Can I add something in?
You're hiding
yes, of course you can add.
I just wanted to point out because you just said advocate, right? And that's one thing that I don't know if the community is always aware of how much the fire service is in bridging the gap and cleaning out the corners, so to speak, and making things happen for the community as far as people we're advocating for. As far like how many times have you gone into a house where this person has no services? They have no idea that there are even services offered. The only reason why there was a 911 call made is because they had a neighbor that was concerned and they hadn't seen him out in a while or something happened, right? So like advocacy is a huge thing, so like in Stoughton, we have the Council on Aging and we have all these resources that like when we leave someone's house and it's not like up to a living standard that we would,
Yeah. We're not only advocating for ourselves, we have to advocate for our customers.
That's it. And so that is as far as demonstrating our capabilities, right? That's one of the things that I'm not always sure that the community is aware of that.
Yeah.
Like how much we're doing for the actual community behind the scenes to make things happen for everybody.
Right.
And that's not, I'm obviously not trying to like toot our own horn or anything, right?
I mean, it
is one of the things. People are always amazed when I tell them that we go to calls for toe pain and they laugh, but it's like, no, we really do. We go
for real.
We go to these like ridiculous things, right? But they're also not aware on the other end of like some of the real serious things that we're doing to improve the community.
Yeah,
that's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
I think some of the smaller like social services type stuff that we do, at least for me, has been like some of the most like that I felt like I've done the most good.
Absolutely.
For people.
No question.
We had a call the other day where it was more like a social services call, and he was just this like older gentleman, and I ended up talking to him for like 20 minutes just because he was like one of those wise old sage kind of guys. Yeah. And then people that maybe they don't have like food in their fridge, and it's going to be a while, and you just go to like, what does it cost us to just go to like Cumberland Farms and get them,
I've made people's dinners and things like
actually,
that before.
I remember.
Oh, it was us, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Will instituted the Feel Good Fire Department policy. I was I don't know, this was like 2 a.m. I was like, I always enjoyed, I mean, I love working either no matter what, but when I'm salty at like 2 a.m, Will's like positive, and there's like a pendulum, and we kind of like balance each other out. But like it was like just like a lift assist, like mechanical slip and fall, like no head strike or anything, and I'm like tired and don't really want to be there. And like Will's like this fucking ray of sunshine. He's like, hey, like can I get you any food? And like this lady was like, had limited mobility, and like Will's like cooking up food now, and I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, fine. I'm like, man, would you like anything to drink? And she's like, I actually have some like sparkling cider. I'm like, all right. And then after I was just like, all right, that was definitely the right thing to do.
Oh yeah.
No, it was
set her up with a meal.
Her daughter was coming, but she was like going to be a couple hours away, and I think she was on the ground for a while. But
I rolled my eyes. I was like, why do you have to be such a fucking good person all the time? You know what I mean? Like, but stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like they will probably never forget that. And like, Will had like a chef's hat on. And he was like spatula. I don't know. It was
just an apron.
Just an apron.
He's putting on a show, man.
Said kiss the cook on it. I don't know.
But I think the reason is so we're not doing anyone's job, like social services, and we're not taking over, and we're not like fully like doing those things. But the difference between us and some of those organizations is that we end up in people's homes, and we end up in these places, and we end up seeing these things where they weren't called for social services. They
You're
were called,
bridging. You're bridging the gap.
Yeah, it was
That's
a
what we're
neighbor that
doing.
hadn't seen
Yeah.
him in a while, or noticed mail piling up, or whatever the case is, and we have like mandatory, like mandated reporting things that we have to like go to people, and then we have that like, hey, probably the right thing to do might be to reach out and see if we can get this person some help, and by the very nature of our existence, we end up being in that position where we should be in advocating for people.
Right.
And like I said, those are some of the most small things, but can be the most impactful in your career. I forgot to show you guys some of these pictures, but there's one I just really wanted to show, which is the top one, top right. It's Fleet Jello.
Fleet Jello.
I told him that I would redact his official name so he didn't have the burden of fame.
Yeah.
But he just looks fucking majestic in that picture. Other things happened that day. We'll neither confirm nor deny that Engine 3 got stuck in the mud. We had a large group of children chanting around us, Engine 3, Engine 3. But yeah, so it just kind of highlights, and these are all a lot of pictures from previous episodes. Some are, some aren't. So, tech, rope, kind of like that structural collapse, the boat stuff. In the corner, there's a hazmat class that we took one time. I'm not a tech, but Will is.
That was the one we did in Boston,
with
right?
Boston, yeah. So I mostly just wanted to show that picture of Fleet Jello because it's a really good picture. But understanding the difference between hazard and risks, in the depth of my research, I'll make sure that Nick posts this as a public safety announcement. A hazard is something that has the potential to harm you, like a shark. A risk is the likelihood of that hazard causing harm, like a shark attacking you. So, everyone look at this picture and realize if you're on the shore, sharks are a hazard. If you're in the water, sharks are a risk. For all our friends in Cape Cod.
Yeah.
And that concludes our broadcast day minus the question of the day. I've been saving this one for a while. It's a little bit simple. But I feel like there's nothing simple when it comes to the question of the day. And it could have some flavorful, passionate opinions.
Yes.
And that would be...
MSA helmets versus leather.
If you could only pick one... No, we're not there yet. If you could only pick one for the rest of your life, Red Doritos or Cooler Ranch?
Oh, man.
It's
red or blue.
So
Cool Ranch.
Cooler.
They're
cooler than red, so I call them Cooler
So
Ranch.
it's not any flavor of Dorito. It's just
the two classics. And they can't be the 3D ones from like Star Wars back in the day. They're Wild Delicious.
Bro, they just remade 3D like spicy ranch.
I have a few good
nachos.
Doritos.
The two original flavors, Cool Ranch or Nacho.
Cool Ranch.
100% Cool Ranch.
Do you know?
Well, I respect.
Do you know what Cool Ranch Doritos are called in Iceland?
Skimming.
If this is a setup,
it's not
your
a setup.
fucking joke
This is just
earlier.
a fact. This is just
Are they just called regular ranch?
They're called Cool American.
Cool. Oh, is this a real thing?
This is a real thing, yeah.
Are they really?
My buddy, one of my best friends, lived in Iceland for a while, so every time we have... this kid's really funny. He always reiterates stories like you've never heard them before.
Yeah.
And he tells it with the same fiery passion each time.
Good for him.
So every time we get blue Doritos, he's like, hey, you know what these are called? And Iceland, I'm like, no, Jordan, what are they called? He's like,
Do tell.
Cool American,
Can you imagine just like living in Scandinavia and walking in the room, not saying a word and just breaking open a bag of Cool American chips and be like, oh, hey, guys, with an American accent, and be like, would you like a Cool American?
American flag baseball cap.
Yeah.
Would you like a Cool American? And they say yes, and you give them yourself.
Yeah. So
I'm with, it's Cool Ranch.
It has to be Cool Ranch.
Even though we have regular Doritos in the studio today.
I actually only bought this because I thought those were the ones you like.
Actually,
what you didn't notice is I bought myself a small bag of flaming hot Cool Ranch Doritos and ate those. I bought if I'd have known, I would have bought you Cool Ranch.
Well, I thought that we were buying the red bag because we're firefighters.
That is a good point.
And we didn't want the blue bag.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
The blue bags had a tough rap.
When we're in the studio, we eat red
Blue bags
Doritos.
had a rough go of it.
Here's the thing.
Last
Cool
6
Ranch
months or
Doritos
so.
are versatile. You can like eat them as a chip. You can put them on your sandwich. You can crush them up and use them
taco salad.
A taco salad. Well,
Yeah, but
I think you're gonna
do
go
the
nacho.
same thing with red.
I was just
going to
say that, Nick. That's a good point.
You've never seen a prison burrito?
I know, but it's not the same as all.
Did you say prison?
Prison
Yeah.
or prism?
No, prism. Yeah, you can see through them.
Yeah.
When you shine a light on it, all the colors
Yeah,
come
all
out.
the colors of the Doritos rainbow.
No, prison burrito. You crush up like I don't know what they do. I'm not speaking from experience, but YouTube rabbit holes late at night. You know what I mean? While you're waiting for videos to export.
We let them have Doritos.
It's because there's no rules. It's prison rules.
What do you mean them?
The prison.
I will
He's assuming
preface
the
this:
prisoners.
incarcerated people have rights, Barry. All right, sorry, I digress.
They don't actually. It's
So-
all right. So anyway, but yes, the prison burrito you can put like it gives you like a nacho cheesy kind of.
Yeah. But you know what else you can do with Cool Ranch Doritos is you, instead of using breadcrumbs in like a meatloaf or burgers,
Yes.
throw a couple eggs, grind up some Cool Ranch Doritos, throw them in as a binder, bro.
It's an incredibly versatile food.
Versatile.
Excellent.
Food.
like
But Nicholas, we haven't gotten your final verdict. Whether you're a team blue or team red, you can only pick one.
Choose wisely. I want the red bag with the blue flavor.
Right, that is something I would say. No, I'll go with blue too. That's fine. Yeah.
Wow, I think this is the first unanimous.
Might be.
Wow.
I'm gonna change my answer. No.
Yeah. In that case, I'm going to advocate for a red. I'm going to advocate for nacho.
I mean, I'm not
just
saying
to
they're a
argue.
bad guy.
Can I say why though?
Yes, of course.
Because
You
they're
can.
not my chip of choice. Doritos in general are not my chip of choice.
I know.
I'm a Cheeto guy.
What?
Oh, dude, Cheetos are addicting.
Disgusting.
I
mean, I
Good,
would eat
that's
them.
fine.
I would eat
More
them.
for
Right,
me.
wait, hang on.
More for me. I don't say that like you're disgusting, but that's fine. I don't take offense. Go ahead.
All right, just
Are you
to
going to
flesh
call me
this out.
disgusting too?
Not for the Cheetos thing.
We're in a. What happened to our loop?
I'm so happy I have a camera on me this time so that everybody can see my
There's so
reaction.
just like with Doritos, there are so many Cheetos. Are you like a Puffs guy? Are you like a regular Cheetos? I'm a flaming hot Cheetos guy.
So
wait, did you say Cheetos?
Cheetos, yeah. What did you say?
I was
Cheez-Its?
thinking I was thinking Jacks.
Cheez-Its?
Like the
Jacks.
like the cheese puffs, like you were just
What,
saying.
like Cumberland Farms brand? Can you name like a
Like
less
Cracker
known
Balls?
chip?
Jacks, like Cracker Jacks?
Cracker
No,
Jacks?
Jacks, like the
Cracker
cheese
Jacks are
puffs.
I've never heard them called
they're
Jacks.
like- they're like
What's
shaped-
your second favorite?
They're like
Bugles?
Shaped, they're like shaped
I
like
mean,
a
Bro,
mustache. Bugles.
when you put them on your hand like
I
fingernails,
knew, I really,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I expected that to come
Yeah.
from. I expected that to come from Barry. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow.
Swear to
Wow.
God.
Or Pringles when you put them like duck lips.
Oh,
you
yeah.
never done the Pringles?
Okay,
Yeah.
so Pringles. If you're talking traditional chips, not because like Cheeto is kind of like a.
Pringles also not
like
a
a
traditional chip. It's like half cardboard, but all right.
Okay, a Pringle is a staple of Americana.
I love
Okay?
them. I'm just saying, if you look, they're like potato product.
All I'm saying is that like when I think of a chip, I think of a Pringle.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, sour cream and onion Pringle.
Pretty good.
I like the original.
So you know how we were talking about like Americana in the summer and the 4th of July, like we're there, like Dad's on the grill, like, hey, little Tyke, you want to throw, want to get some?
Yeah.
Why don't you go get the Heinz?
The
You know what I
shitty
mean? Remember? Like we
cheeseburger.
were there.
Tyke.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's
Hey,
Doritos.
little Tyke.
That's
Hey,
Doritos,
little,
though.
like when you're like, hey, little fella, hey,
Yeah,
cold,
I see.
Cold beer.
I feel like I see Pringles. There.
Now I see Doritos. I
Or
see 2 bags
actually,
of Doritos
you
and a
know-
bag of Tostitos.
You know what I see is the cardboard with the plastic over it, and it's just all like the lunch bag
The little
size.
bags?
Yeah. Just brought out, put on
But
a plastic folding table.
imagine if someone comes over and is like, hey, would you like some Cracker Jacks with the fireworks? What's fucking more American than that?
Reminds me of the
Okay,
Sandlot.
so there. Can I tell
With
one
the
quick
striped
thing?
box?
One quick story, because I know we're getting a little long in the tooth here. Actually, we're right on schedule. It's not bad. There was an old lady, like this lady. She's like one of those people that was on like Al Roker, like Smuckers. Like this lady turns a century today,
yeah.
like 100 years before I met her. So anyway, on Halloween, she used to give out Cracker Jack boxes.
Nice.
Nothing
People
more
used to
American.
complain, and like we'd go like trick or treating, whatever, with like a whole bunch of group of kids, and people would complain. I'd be like, "Yeah, dude, I totally get that. You can have like my Sour Patch Kids, the little like snack pack
Yeah.
BS thing they give you, because no one gives like a full bag of anything, right? You know,
All the
Let's
rich
hear it.
people.
and
rich
like, but
people.
like Cracker Jack little boxes, like fat
Yeah, with
guy
the
feast,
peanuts.
Nothing more
Yeah.
American.
you know.
Cracker Jacks, yeah.
So I would like go home with a pillowcase full of Cracker Jacks and Reese's.
I like that.
I mean,
Do
you
you
could
think-
walk away with nothing else but Reese's on Halloween, and I
Oh,
would be
facts
satisfied.
all day
Satisfied.
long,
Yeah.
110%. But I'm just saying, Cracker Jacks
yeah.
and
We'll have to bring it
Reese's.
up as a separate thing because I don't like chocolate really.
He's gonna say like Three
Wha-
Musketeers or something
what?
lame.
What
Some
did
bullshit.
you just say?
I don't really like chocolate.
He told me he doesn't
I'll
like
eat-
chocolate chip cookies.
You're not American.
No,
That's
this-
it.
we
I don't
gotta do
care.
this as a
Listen,
separate
I
subject.
He's
appreciate
American,
you.
it's just not a good one.
I
Listen,
loathe chocolate chips.
I'm gonna call my mother on break. She's going to go home and bake you some right now. I
He's
promise
not in the
you.
loop. He's not in the loop.
And Thursday,
It's not the cookie. I'll love the cookie. She doesn't make the chocolate chips. I guarantee it. She buys them, and I won't like them.
you don't know who my mother is.
They
Or what
ruin
she's
the cookie.
capable of.
She has
They
her own
ruin the
cocoa
cookie.
plants. You don't know.
Anyways,
Cacao.
She stomps them with the feet. And yeah.
I thought this would be a simple question of the day. We wouldn't dive. You know,
I mean, it was simple
Yeah, it was
until we
simple.
went off.
It was,
off
and then
the
we went
track.
off.
and then
topic.
you brought it out the rails again. You don't like?
I
chocolate
didn't.
chip
You
cookies?
guys started with Cracker
All right,
Jacks and
no.
Reese's.
All right. Anyways, John.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Jobtlks podcast. Jobtlks out.
He had more to say.
We didn't do the outro.
That's true, and we haven't stopped recording yet either. So, if you
Dang.
like this video,
We did.
That's it. We're back. Hello.
Did you put the outro in?
I did. Yeah. Buy our shirts.
All right.
we're still recording. So, like, I'm
I
not
know.
cutting anything. Go.
Oh, jeez.
Oh yeah.
Oh, jeez. All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Episode 13. Thank you, Barry, for putting that one together. We are putting shirts up on either the website or the Facebook page. We're in the process. Hopefully, by the time this airs, we have it all figured out. This is not a cashless money grab. We are paying handsomely Wilco Media to have this production value because we think it's important to have good production so we can get the message and the conversation out there. So please support us by grabbing a shirt if you like it. We have a small order on right now. We'll see how those go, and then we'll order from there. So you can find those, or the link to them at least, on our social media pages. Please subscribe. Please set your alerts. And then, as always, follow us on our social medias and look for us if you want to listen to this in the car versus watch it. We're on all the major we're on all the major streaming platforms. Thank you very much. Please give us your feedback and let us know something you might be interested in talking to.
Thanks, guys.
Now, Jonathan.
Well, I also do have one more
Jesus Christ.
thing. If you guys haven't been on the website recently, we've updated it. We're going to try and put on our merch. Like Will said, please consider supporting us. It means a lot and helps keep us self-sufficient, or self-funded operation, but something we all believe in. But we also recently put on the Jobtlks bookshelf. So if you're interested in any of the reading recommendations that we've talked about on previous episodes, those will be up there. We also have a new segment on the website called What's Fred Reading? So Deputy Chief Eichels has been kind enough to be more of a consistent figure on the show now by doing the What's Fred Reading segment. So he's a voracious reader. All the book recommendations he's ever given me have been phenomenal. So every month he's going to give us a new book recommendation, and that will work to build the Jobtlks bookshelf. So we'll have like a brief synopsis of the book, Fred's thoughts about it, and then ultimately his recommendation for the month. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and it'll kind of grow the show and the bookshelf over time. And I'll have a resource for you guys. So that's all I got.
And another thing, I'm just kidding. Jobtlks out.